is Monday, July 28th. SneepBeepins here with Bill Billson, and today we're just gonna get right into the news. Today on the docket, we're mostly gonna be talking about the situation happening in Palestine, Israel. So pretty serious stuff. But briefly before that, I want to talk about how the Epstein situation has panned out just over the past week. Last week, I mentioned that briefly that the DOJ was ordered to release quote unquote any and all pertinent documents on Epstein. The Florida courts. It's from my understanding, there are three different courts that have documents on Epstein from their past court cases. That's what's actually going to be released. Just stuff that's was in cases he was tried and convicted for in the past. So the courts in Florida, they rejected to unseal their documents from 2005 and 2007 cases.
They said
Uh,
hell
so
no.
I, what was that?
They said hell no.
Yeah. I mean, I guess that's something you can do. And then there are two New York courts that still have yet to decide to release theirs. I haven't heard anything about that, so maybe
It's
they'll
kind of
just
like frightening. Uh, if it's not like the transparency, why are they not releasing it? Like I know Trump has been saying like stuff falling into like conspiracies, like uh, the courts are changing something or they don't want to reveal stuff. I feel like both sides, maybe I don't know if it's specifically a side thing, but like they want to hold back information or put Donald Trump thinks that they're putting extra information in there.
right. I mean, it's a suspicious thing to do, but I mean, I don't know if I align with the Trump idea there. I mean,
Yeah,
the
right.
uh, the justification from the courts was that it's just some kind of legal issue. They're like, "Oh, I'd love to release them, but statute of limitations, I'm just not allowed to."
What does that
So,
even mean? Like,
that wasn't exactly what he said. It wasn't the statute of limitations, but there's some legal excuse that he came up with that they're not allowed to release them. And yeah, I don't know how much I buy that. I think it's suspicious as well, but I don't know what exactly to what end.
yeah.
I think transparency would be ideal. And then in other Epstein news, the big Epstein news of the week, Trump's DOJ meeting with Ghislaine Maxwell and the representative they have, actually Trump's defense attorney on his criminal trial, the huge one for his corruption.
Mhm.
So just barely over a year ago, his defense attorney going to talk to Ghislaine Maxwell now. I'm sure there's no biases there.
Dang. Connections.
So they talked over the course of 3 days for 9 hours total. Maxwell named like 100 people or so in the course of their talks. Not sure about what exactly yet, and she was given limited immunity for anything she talks about, which just means yeah, if she discusses like a crime she was a part of, she won't be tried for that. Uh, and just a few minutes ago, another headline came out. Ghislaine's lawyer releases a statement begging the Supreme Court to overturn her conviction, basically. Begging the Supreme Court to overturn her conviction or for Donald Trump to pardon her. They include both of them. And this follows Trump saying just earlier today in a press conference that I'm allowed to pardon her, but nobody's approached me about it.
Really? Nobody? And it like if he were to pardon her, it would be in his interest for him to maybe skew what she's saying about people as well.
Precisely. I mean, I'm sure what's happened over the course of these talks is uh, y- Donald Trump's attorney said, "We will pardon you if you
Give
you
us the right
know, say
answers.
Obama was on the fucking Epstein
Oh,
list.
boy. And that's
And,
exactly what Trump was saying was happening to him.
yeah.
Projection. Tricky, tricky, tricky.
Yeah, I don't know. Donald Trump says, I'm allowed to pardon her, nobody's approached me about it." So, they directly approach him because I guess whatever they said during their 9 hours of conversation, that was 2 guys for him to figure it out, so they're just directly begging for a pardon now. I'd give it, 50% chance she's pardoned before this episode is even released, like, in the next 24 hours. 100% chance she's pardoned by next week. Like, yeah, just ridiculous, man. And this is a woman, like, convicted of the sex trafficking of minors. That's what
Ye
her conviction is.
At, like, the
Like,
highest scale, too.
yeah, the, like, most notorious sex trafficker in the past fucking century.
Yeah.
Uh, I've got this clip from an Epstein victim who, died by suicide earlier this year or last year, I believe. But it's a clip from her a while back just talking about Ghislaine.
She is a monster. She's worse than Epstein. She did things even worse than Epstein did. She was vicious, she was evil, and she's a woman.
Her lawyers have said Ghislaine Maxwell is not a Jeffrey Epstein, that she has been a victim of media spin.
They're doing their job, but I know that woman. I've known her really well. Put it this way. Epstein was Pinocchio and she was Geppetto. She was the guy controlling
Pulling the strings.
Jeffrey. Yep.
Yeah, so
Typical woman pattern. She was a woman.
yeah, I don't know. I don't know exactly what's going on with her. Uh, I mean, a victim of Epstein and Ghislaine Maxwell, probably pretty traumatized person. So,
Absolutely.
uh, but yeah, person worse than Jeffrey Epstein. Yeah, let her go free. I mean, in a matter of years, I mean, when when she's been pardoned, everyone will look back at it as like, you remember the cool guy that fucked hot chicks on his island, and how he died and he died by suicide? I don't know, that'll be the only story. Justice for Jeffrey Epstein, just a cool guy who liked to fuck
Goodness.
hot chicks on an island.
Oh, that's what the media wants you to believe in.
I've got another clip, talking about just how the Treasury Department has, like, 4,000 some files on Jeffrey Epstein. Do you wanna see that real quick? Yeah, that's, I mean, it goes on for a little while, but
Who
he's a
invited
very
Pee Wee
long-winded
Herman?
speaker. Yeah, he talks very slowly, and, he's not got the most pleasant voice, but yeah, I mean all kinds of, did on this guy just sitting, collecting dust,
Yeah.
uh, when, this president ran on releasing the Epstein files, so I think it's something that divides the base. It's important to shine a light on it, continue to shine a light on it because, I mean, it's a pretty horrific sex trafficking scandal,
Yeah.
and I mean, it's very likely our president is implicated in it and is trying to hide that and
Mhm.
uh, very obvious ways, and I don't think people should forget about it.
Trying to string together maybe the reason why, that's the very difficult thing as a, MAGA supporter myself in the past. Um, that's been challenging, especially taking the main route, which would be listening to what Donald Trump has to say. Very difficult thing to do at this point. Just the deflection and I don't know, it's coming to light, maybe his attitude towards approaching things. In the past, it's been effective for getting across his point and his policies and whatnot, but now it feels like deflection. It feels like he's not telling the truth. And it feels like a very like I've heard people say deer in the headlight moment, and I mean that's kind of how I felt about the clip we saw last week of Donald Trump basically calling his supporters stupid. It makes me curious about why. So I think it's interesting that the information about Epstein being a part of the Israeli spy um, spies, or he was an Israeli spy. Uh,
Mhm.
that's interesting because if this was a blackmail operation, which it definitely could have been, using the leverage of the tapes or whatnot
Mhm.
that have been supposedly done. If the Israeli government was using that maybe to blackmail people like Donald Trump, or maybe not Donald Trump specifically, there are a lot of connections to his administration in Israel, which is really interesting. And if Epstein was an Israeli spy and had that Israeli connection, he could Epstein could have been maybe controlled by uh, someone in the Israeli government, or some elite, to persuade American government officials by blackmail to influence policy and to infiltrate Donald Trump's party. And that might be um, the most rational solution to why Donald Trump is deflecting right now, because he has members in his administration, people that are close to him, that have ties to Israel and might have blackmail on themselves. But if Donald Trump were to release that, that's not a good look. But then again, him just blatantly lying, it seems like, is also not a good look either. But I think
So
that's where I have been maybe seeing justification for why Donald Trump might be shutting down.
okay. So first, I just wanna, like, elaborate on your point there, like, just to, illuminate what you're saying for the uninitiated. You're referring to, like, uh, the this theory that Jeffrey Epstein acted as a federal agent, it he trafficked all these minors, and made all these connections with famous, with, all kinds of world leaders and famous people. Yeah, so that they, for the purpose of a honeypot, so they could, have video and blackmail these people. Why? And there are a few different thoughts about that. Like, people say it's the CIA that does that, or Mossad. Oh yeah. I saw this clip during the week. I wish I saved it, but I got this clip of some Republican implying maybe Chinese intelligence, Russian intelligence, and
Interesting.
that's no, that's complete misdirection. Like that's yeah. I don't even remember who said that, but I wish I had it right now. But no, the popular theories are Mossad and the CIA. Somewhere else I was going with that. But no, just why do you think Israel? Why do you think he's an agent for Israel and not the CIA?
Uh,
Let's just ask that.
I feel okay. Okay, that's Israel has done a lot of deceptive things in its history that are coming to light, and so that's where
Certainly,
a lot
certainly.
of my skepticism about Israel is. I do think the CIA is definitely like
Yeah, the CIA is
it's
just
very
as
similar,
deceptive.
yes, but I feel like the ties between both of them are a lot more deeply ingrained than maybe is made out to be. For
Mhm.
example, let me see. I think I might have a note somewhere. So the CIA back in the day, we're talking like JFK era. Um, and this kind of gets into American imperialism.
Mhm.
They were, staging a lot of coups against a lot of different countries at the time, including Iran, including the Congo, Cuba. All of that is like, you know, pretty readily available nowadays. So there is
Yeah.
that influence going on behind the CIA. Um, and part of the US's incentive to get into Israel was to assert imperialism over the Middle East for trade in oil. And I think what Israel became is a way to not directly impose imperialism, but to do it discreetly. Because if
Mhm.
the CIA were to directly impose this, it would be known that the United States government is being a little too aggressive in the Middle East. So I feel like Israel became a CIA state almost, and there might be a connection behind the Zionists then, making it a little complex and kind of expanding this here. Because the
Mhm.
Zionists have the desire to get into Israel and make it. They wanted it to be an independent state. They needed help, and that's leverage. And we've seen the power that the CIA had in other countries, and that would be beneficial to Israel if the CIA would help them, finish their mission, which is to have the Israel state and Jerusalem and whatnot as their homeland. And I feel like that connection makes a lot of sense as to why there might be a connection between the CIA and Israel.
Okay. So I'm hearing basically it's not mutually exclusive.
Yeah,
Um, yeah. Okay. Uh, and that's one school of thought for conspiracy about Epstein, but I think what I'm more inclined to believe it may be a little. Some might say it's a little more conspiratorial, but it's not the intelligence angle at all. It's just it the elite.
hmm
When you're at those levels of power, I mean, power begets power. It absolute power corrupts absolutely. They they
yeah,
the elite just do fucked up satanic shit like
yeah,
that, and it's a ritual. It's like a ritualistic child fucking for the elite, so that and it's still like for blackmail purposes,
yeah.
like so they have something to hold against each other. It's just they're all a part of the club.
Yes, and I
Yeah.
I think that that directly connects to the CIA theory as well. If we look back into the CIA's history, there was a man that went by the name of find it here, Alan Douglas. He became a CIA director after being a Wall Street executive, so he was a part of the elite class and then became a CIA director. And then what
Hmm.
followed is the imperialism in those other countries. And so that's showing that like part of the CIA is this idea of the deep state, that the elite are directly affecting um, government policies and agencies like the CIA. And this gets really, really upsetting the more and more you go into it because um, Alan Douglas, JFK fires Alan Douglas after misleading him over the Bay of Pigs invasion in Cuba. And Alan got upset because JFK was trying to limit his control over the deep state and CIA. And it is theorized that Allen led the deep state to assassinate JFK because JFK was trying to push back the control of the deep state and the CIA. It's just crazy because Allen was backed by wealthy clients and the elites, just like you're talking about. And I feel like if this is something that's been going on since back then, this might be directly connected because um, when we're talking about power and how the elite can use their power, that's how they apply their power without being, directly involved.
Yeah, I think I agree completely. So, just for clarity's sake, where exactly do you think Donald Trump falls into all of this? Because, for my opinion, I mean, I'll just be clear. As Jeffrey Epstein said, he was my closest friend for 10 years. I think Donald Trump is deeply implicated in all kinds of aspects of this. Ghislaine Maxwell's original trial, I think that she says Donald Trump's name over 1,000 times.
Hmm.
And I can't imagine, she just 1,000 times had to say, I never met Donald Trump. I don't really know him that well.
I definitely think he's a part of it, but I think the bigger picture is it's more than Donald Trump. I think it's the elites
Certainly.
definitely have a hand in this, and it's just interesting that Donald Trump would run and get so far using like terminology like the deep state. Either that's a very deceptive way of going about it, or he and this is just a theory, maybe he does want to stir the pot and maybe he wants to get things done, but his involvement is so deeply entrenched that he might have to go down with the ship, and that might also be why he's so hesitant right now. Because if
Mhm.
he doesn't get the right information out while he's still in power, while he still has that power, if say the deep state assassinates him because he's trying to do this, then we won't have the answers that we need, and it'll be further covered up because uh, the elites don't want that to be revealed.
Well, I could see how that would be a hypothetical fear for somebody, but uh, I have yet to see by any of Donald Trump's actions that I don't give him that much of the benefit of the doubt to believe that he's thinking out a way to expose the deep state.
Yeah, but he kind of ran on it as well.
Just because I think, I mean, I think he underestimated how much his base's attention span to that topic. I think he just thought it was some shit he could say. He could just, show them. He could just do the binder thing at the beginning of his presidency. Have, oh, look at all the Epstein files, and that would be enough to satisfy them.
Hmm.
Uh, he didn't think it would get this deep. He really underestimated them. And maybe that's like a sign of his hubris, or maybe it's the art of the deal kind of slips when you're 82.
Yeah,
I don't
yeah,
know. But like recent clips of him, it just says, I mean, if he wasn't running against like Joe Biden, I I think I think people would be like, this is the demented president.
right,
Like, if
right.
we hadn't just put up with Joe Biden, we would be saying, yeah, this guy is having some clear mental issues. Like,
But it
yeah.
also paints a bigger picture here because there wasn't really any better options. There was Kamala Harris and Donald Trump, and um, it's disheartening uh, as a citizen that it's so obviously controlled by the elites, by who has money, by who has the connections, and all that comes with power. So it's really just a power game rather than maybe what's best for the country. And it can be played off as that's what it is, but it's just it's a story. It's a way to gather the masses, to inspire, and to get your power into play. And it doesn't seem like it's supporting Americans. It's supporting the elite, and there's a lot of actions that Donald Trump has made that shows that. But that's also a part of just how the system works right now. You have to play favors. You have to manipulate. You have to do all these things that are not available to the public. They're only reserved for the elite. And it seems like there's a game going on behind the scenes it's the real meat and bones, but we don't ever get to see it, and that's concerning. Um, it doesn't feel like that's maybe how our founding fathers wanted it. And if it is a system thing, something radical would have to happen in order for us to get back to a people-focused government, real democracy, because it's more and more falling into this, oligarchy of elites or something like that, and,
I agree.
it's tricky. It's tricky.
I agree. Going like eh, going back to your point about there not being any good options, really. I'm coming from a perspective like I'm as a leftist, like who didn't vote for Kamala Harris, because yeah, the Democratic Party failed to differentiate itself
Mhm.
from the Republican Party in any meaningful way. It's an oligarchy of elites. I mean, Kamala ran on a campaign like basically like a moderate conservative campaign. Their one debate they had, she was like, "Yeah, I basically agree with your immigration policy." And she said, I agree with you to other things too. And like most abhorrently, like the reason I did not vote for her was the Israel policy, a refusal to differentiate herself
Yeah.
from Joe Biden's policy, which is hardcore Zionist, like
Yes.
as
Yes.
hardcore Zionist as you can be on the left.
So the
And
elite are in both sides, and
yeah,
maybe that's a strategy. Maybe that's divide and conquer. The people are too divided, too focused on fighting against each other that they can really go after the real enemy, which is the elite and powerful.
but I think segueing from this, talking about how Kamala refused to differentiate herself on Joe Biden's Israel policy. For the people that didn't vote for Kamala, like myself, we get chastised. Do you think uh, Kamala would have been this bad for like what's happening with Israel?
That's a really
And
tricky question. That
yeah, that's a great question, and my
yeah,
my answer to it is we don't know. That's not a question that I can answer. Her policy, she didn't differentiate herself. I mean, she said ceasefire, but I mean, I don't know if she could have convinced Netanyahu's government to do that.
right.
Uh,
And I think that's why Donald Trump had a lot of support is because he's got
yeah,
the
he ran on an anti-war campaign, however much of a lie that might have been.
right. So there might be details that he has that is not making it as clear cut as just doing one thing or going at it, but I feel like he just might have been the better out of the two evils just because I like how he was directly exposing the fact that there is a deep state. I think
But I mean, just him playing to there is a deep state. I'm going to drain the swamp and not doing it. It's just as hollow
well,
as any other political rhetoric that one would run on.
but I appreciate the
And that's the
intention.
thing about the Kamala campaign. She refused to give us hollow political rhetoric. She could have done the same thing as Joe Biden. I have no doubt she would have done the same thing as Joe Biden, but she refused to even say she'd do something different. That
Mhm.
was too terrifying to her, or to the campaign at large.
Right, so we need
And
someone
yeah,
that's
I think that is
willing
Donald.
to
I think that is Donald Trump's advantage. He's willing to differentiate himself from both parties.
yeah,
That's what people think of him. They think of him as a businessman, coming in coming from outside of politics, even though he's been the president. That's still what people think of him as.
yeah, albeit not a very good businessman.
And yeah,
Uh,
yeah, a businessman that's went into bankruptcy like countless times.
I just think his competence and his ability to assert is powerful. Um, I just feel like if Kamala would have been in office, it would have been a lot of maintaining, uh, how it's been and not really stirring the pot in a way that makes change, and that's kinda why I
I
fall
concur
into
completely. That
Donald
that's
Trump more. because like he is
That's
stirring the pot, and it might be to his own detriment, and he might not be able to get what he wants to get done just because there are limitations when you get into office. And every single president finds out the hard way, it seems, because you start to get information that is only accessible to people in power like that. And you have so many strings to pull and so many people going after you and trying to influence you. Um, it's not something that an 82-year-old or someone that old, someone in geriatric age, I think
mhm.
is, able to really deal with effectively. But I feel like Donald Trump does have experience, and I think it might be more than Kamala, and that's why I maybe still fall into supporting Trump uh, a lot more. But that's not to say I just like to see a lot better leadership from the left, I suppose. Um,
I mean, I said this directly after the presidency, directly after the election when it still seemed like Kamala lost by a landslide, and that wasn't necessarily the case. It was a pretty tight margins. Less people voted all around, which is to the main detriment of her. But I said the fucking everyone in the Democratic Party should commit ritualistic suicide, man. Let someone else step up to the fucking
right.
plate. Like it is pathetic.
It is, like,
And
and both
maybe,
sides, honestly, like,
it,
the
yeah, yeah,
people in
no,
power
totally. The
being so
Republicans
old,
as well.
that's like this country was founded on people in their 20s, like, young men, ambitious men, people
Hmm.
with testosterone, not necessarily saying that, women can't, do the same thing, but men are testosterone machines. They have a flame of, I don't know what other to call it than testosterone. There's a thing called young men syndrome, which allows young men to mindlessly go to war, mindlessly be assertive, mindlessly be dangerous. And that was what this country was founded on.
Is that what they call it when your brain doesn't fully develop until you're 25? Young men syndrome.
Something like that. It's the reason why young men are into extreme sports, why young men enlist into war. It's a survival mechanism. Uh, I mean, if you think about it, if you're in your prime as a young man, your testosterone is supposed to be through the roof because back in the day, you were the warriors of the tribe, you were the protectors, because there was a biological advantage to that. Of course, both sexes were vitally important to maintaining a tribe, but there's a reason for that, and it's just like these geriatrics have no testosterone. They have no, fucking gall.
I-
They have no what do you call it? Flame. They're washed out, and it's disheartening because they're gonna die, and we have to go through the consequences that they lay out for us. Why don't we have an uproar in our youth, about this? Because this is affecting not only us, but our children. If we want to have families, if we want to have the fruits of our life, this is all being affected by people who are going to be dying soon, and we don't
Mhm.
care. And this is another thing. In men, testosterone has gone down by 50% over the last 50 years. And that's
Too
crazy.
many microplastics in the balls.
For real, for real. There's so many different things that are causing that too. And it just makes me want to think more conspiratorial because, there's one way to control the masses, and that's to divide and conquer, but there's other ways. Dilute them, get rid of their flame, make them so that way they don't want to cause
Mhm.
an uproar. That's definitely a tactic.
Yeah, no, that's yeah, tried and true tactic of the American Empire. They actively cultivate an underclass.
They want the poor to stay poor, unempowered, and that's like the
Mhm.
exact opposite of, how we used to do it back in the day. There was this socialist balance between the elite and the working class because the working class were the meat and bones of this country. It was so
Mhm.
important to people like Abraham Lincoln that we regulate the elites so that way, there is balance between the working class and the elites because back in the day that was the source of our power is we had a great working class and over time money became more of importance to the government rather than the working class. And there's many different examples of why or how they did that. And it's again going into the elite shit. The elite run the government. I mean, what do we do as the working class to make that change? If it's not getting involved in politics, um, what else is it? I mean, conversations like this where we're talking about these ideas are important for sure. But taking action is also important, but it doesn't seem like there are clear cut actions to do that.
Mhm. There's yeah, there's not. I mean, there's not a real outlet. A lot of outlets have been systematically destroyed, like in the case of unions or something. But outlets for political dissent are, despite our free speech, I mean, they aren't common in America now.
I think that it's interesting that Bibi Netanyahu has visited Donald Trump, what, like 3 times this year? Um,
Mhm.
and suddenly there's a switch up after he visits Donald Trump and his willingness to release all this information.
Yeah. You think that's related?
I definitely do because if there is, information relating to Israel and their
Mm.
involvement in all this and how they have been maybe facilitating deep state uh, control, that'll only, weaken the Israel power. If Israel wants to win its war against Palestine, if the United States public finds out that Israel has been doing all this deceptive blackmailing and all this deep state activity, then we won't they won't have the funding. So there's definitely an interest in that for sure. And that might be again why Donald Trump is so reluctant to release more information.
Yeah. I think I think that is a possibility, but certainly for Netanyahu's visits to America, the goal of that 100% is to increase Israel's purchase with just the average American. Beyond visiting Donald Trump, he's been visiting podcasters, like right
Oh
wing
my goodness.
podcasters.
Yes. Yes, that is incredible. The Nelk Boys.
Yeah, the Nelk Boys. But Joe Rogan refused to have him on the podcast. But
Yeah.
yeah, the Nelk Boys, who I'm not entirely familiar with, but yeah, they have some pretty good clout on the right wing.
Y-
Yeah, they just
They
interviewed him this week. Did you watch that?
I've heard news about it. I did not personally watch it, but I've heard a lot
Yeah,
of bad things about it because the
yeah,
Nelk Boys aren't informed.
yeah. That's I saw this clip where they say, "Oh, we're not. We're totally not. We shouldn't be doing this."
This is fucking nuts,
This
dude.
is so crazy. We are so not qualified to do
Yeah,
this.
no.
That's what's interesting about this. We're just not. We just should not be doing this.
They're just like, it's right before Netanyahu comes in. They're like, "Oh, Netanyahu's about to come in. We shouldn't be doing this. We aren't educated enough at all."
Right.
And then they just go on with it and like,
Giving
okay,
platform
guys,
to another elite of
uh,
political.
giving platform to a man, leading a
Yes.
genocidal regime. Yeah.
Yes. Bibi
Uh,
Netanyahu is like a modern Hitler.
yeah.
And
No, literally, I think the Israeli government, in such a cruelly, disturbingly ironic way, is so much comparable
yeah,
to
it's
the
crazy.
Nazi regime. Yeah.
but the audience of the Nelk Boys have been getting a lot, or the Nelk Boys have been getting a lot of pushback on giving Netanyahu a platform.
Mhm.
They are not happy about it. They're losing a lot of subscribers because of it. Um, and I think that's definitely deserved because you're giving platform to propaganda. It's not like you're having um, political debate. It's just you're letting him have a platform without any pushback because you're uninformed. This isn't like going to journalists who have, who have the experience of pushing back on politicians. This is just like a pure platform for propaganda, it seems like.
Yeah, I'm glad to hear, like, some people are pushing back against, this recent campaign by Israel to kind of change, American perspective on what's happening because it's been increasingly dropping,
Mhm,
American approval ratings for what's happening in Gaza, like, they're so low, yeah, they're nearing, like, single digits, but, I mean, there are still people out here, and maybe, it's a vocal minority, but, vocal nonetheless, that support this genocide, especially in our own government. There's a lot of propaganda, pro-Israel propaganda coming out from our politicians, especially on the highest level with Donald Trump.
mhm,
I have a clip of him responding to the announcement that the U.S. has pulled out of ceasefire agreements again on Thursday.
mhm,
And just to briefly sum those up, Hamas submitted their, final ceasefire proposal, and then later that day, the U.S. and Israel pulled out. Um, Here's just a quote from a senior Hamas official about the ceasefires and the withdrawals. They say, "What we have presented with full awareness and understanding of the complexity of the situation, we believe could lead to a deal with the enemy if they had the will to reach one." And I think that last part's very important about Israel and the US at this point.
mhm,
We have no will to reach an agreement uh, with the Palestinians. And then on Friday, the day after, another Hamas official, they're quoted saying, keenness to continue the negotiations and engage in a way that could ease obstacles and ensure reaching a permanent ceasefire. Yeah, that's just a piece of a quote. But that's the day after the negotiations ended, and uh, yeah, I mean, this is a people being painted by Donald Trump, a people that wants to die.
yeah.
Uh, yeah, just unbelievable the rhetoric coming out of our government. I've got a clip here of Donald Trump saying that. Here, I'm gonna play that real quick.
Yeah, Gaza, they pulled out of Gaza. They pulled out in terms of negotiating. It was too bad. Hamas didn't really want to make a deal. I think they want to die, and it's very, very bad. And it got to be to a point where you're gonna have to finish the job. They really they asked for things. Don't forget, we got a lot of hostages out. So now we're down to the final hostages, and they know what happens after you get the final hostages. And basically, because of that, they really didn't want to make a deal. I saw that. So they pulled.
Okay, so what happens after we pull out the final hostages? Like that's what we want, isn't it? We pull out the final hostages, and then what happened? We bulldoze the entirety of the place. Why would they not want to? I don't understand. What happens that's so bad for them after they release the hostages? Why is that a bad
They
thing?
have less leverage, maybe.
Precisely. I'm like no, like and that's exactly it. But it doesn't I don't think it makes sense from Donald Trump's perspective, like, this is the point of, I don't know, he's just refusing to engage with them on any actual terms, like
I think it's just has to go back to Israel has a plan. Um, the government officials in Israel are, they have a history of being far right, being extremist, and this is, if Donald Trump is being influenced by the government officials in Israel, then he's definitely gonna have to go along with, what they're saying. Netanyahu, like I said, very similar to Hitler. He's a far right extremist, and many of the people he has on his support have direct terrorist histories, which is crazy. So
Mm-hmm.
the government, it seems like in Israel, is you can separate it. There is Israel, the people, and Israel, the leadership, which right now it's under Zionist leadership. And the Zionists want, Palestine out of Israel. They want to assert control over that area, and that's going to be to the detriment of the people of Israel. This isn't about Judaism, it's about Zionism, I feel like, which of
I
course is
agree.
it's a, what do you call it? A sect of Judaism, but it's a far
Well,
right. It's a
hardly
extremist.
even. Zionism is an ideology that doesn't. I mean, it doesn't even need to. It's just parallel to Judaism. In America, most of our Zionists are Christian Zionists. Like Joe Biden, for example, he might be a Catholic Zionist even.
That's facetious though, because you're in Zionism, the leaders that are leading this Zionist movement are supporting genocide. And how
Mhm.
can you be a
The
Christian and
some
support?
of the founders of Zionism, it's secular. I mean,
Yeah,
the founders of Zionism were secular. Some of them. Uh, yeah, it's not necessary. It's not a Jewish project. I mean, a lot of Jews. I mean, in the modern era, especially, a lot of Jews don't agree with Israel's project.
right. But there's also this case that if you are a Jew and you do not support Zionism, you're being anti-Semitic, or even if you're outside of, you know, uh, Judaism, if you're not supporting it, you're not supporting the cause. And
And that's a false conflation. I mean, being anti-Zionist is not being anti-Semitic.
but I feel like that's what's being pushed a lot by the culture that is being influenced by maybe the elite that want Zionism to be manifested.
Certainly. I've got another clip that I want to play just about Republican messaging on the Israel-Palestine. This is Lindsey Graham on Meet the Press. He's just talking about what's going to happen, what the future for Palestine looks like.
I think President Trump has come to believe, and I certainly come to believe, there's no way you're going to negotiate an end to this war with Hamas. Hamas is a terrorist organization who is chartered to destroy the state of Israel. They're religious Nazis. They hold Israeli hostages. I think Israel's come to conclude that they can't achieve a goal of ending the war with Hamas that would be satisfactory to the safety of Israel. And if they're going to do in Gaza what we did in Tokyo and Berlin, take the place by force, then start over again, presenting a better future for the Palestinians, hopefully having the Arabs take over the West Bank and Gaza. But I think
That does seem like that's the future layout.
Yeah, but just the irony of calling just these people religious Nazis when, the Israelis have been running a starvation campaign for 2 months,
Yeah.
refusing any food in or out, setting up traps with aid sites, killing over 1,000 people in the past months at false aid sites.
Hmm.
Um, and a really important thing to note about like these GHF traps um is that it's not just Israelis here. You have Americans hired by private armies, private military organizations. They're here at these traps shooting at and by some reports shooting Palestinians, just civilians.
Hmm.
Uh, it's sickening.
It
And you
is.
don't hear that from the Western media at all, that there are Americans out there.
When they called Hamas, far right Nazis and whatnot, you can't neglect the fact that Israel is also just being equally extreme. And I think extreme
Mhm.
fights extreme. Like the only way you're going to deal with extreme is by fighting with extreme. Otherwise, one person lose. And it's unfortunate
Yeah,
because
and I
people are
mean,
suffering for that extremism on both sides.
it's not like Hamas exists in a vacuum. I think it's outside the scope of this, but an organization that exists in response to
Yes.
the apartheid state uh, that they live in
Yes.
Palestine. I've got a clip from a BBC interview with one of these Americans who was working for a private military organization, and he's just got some horrific stuff to share.
Forces shooting at the crowds of Palestinians. I witnessed the Israeli Defense Forces firing a main gun tank round from the Markava tank into a crowd of people, destroying a car of civilians that were simply driving away from the site. I witnessed mortar rounds being fired at the crowds of people to keep them controlled.
As a professional soldier with a very long career, what was your professional opinion of what was happening?
My professional opinion of how the sites were established was what I would describe as amateur, inexperienced, untrained, no idea of how to conduct operations of this magnitude. That would be my most benign assessment. In my most frank assessment, I would say that they're criminal. In my entire career, have I never witnessed the level of brutality and use of indiscriminate and unnecessary force against a civilian population, an unarmed, starving population. I've never witnessed that in all of the places I've been deployed to war until I was in Gaza at the hands of the IDF and US contractors.
Based on the knowledge you have, do you think that you were a witness then to war crimes? I think you're saying that very emphatically.
Without question, I witnessed war crimes. I witnessed war crimes being held by the Israeli Defense Forces, without a doubt, using artillery rounds, mortar rounds, firing tank rounds into unarmed civilians is a war crime.
This video is of the Foundation's armed American security guards opening fire.
I think you hit one.
It was filmed by a US soldier who signed up for the operation in Gaza after he retired and left, he says, when he saw American colleagues and the IDF killing civilians. The soldier is left.
Jeez.
Yeah, so just harrowing shit. I think we
So
got one.
that's
That's insane.
yeah. That's terrible. But the point of Israel's war crimes, to me, that's very intentional, especially if we look at Netanyahu's strategies in the past. For one, Netanyahu has supported and propped up Hamas with funding for years,
Yeah.
specifically to destabilize the Gaza Strip.
Mm-hmm.
And by firing into civilians, that's only amplifying the radicalization of the people in Palestine to want to fight against Israel, which gives Israel even more reason to want to invade and to stop all the violence. It's
Right.
definitely incentivized by Israel, by these extreme leaders.
Mm-hmm.
So it is disheartening to only hear from the right that Hamas is the only villain at play here, because it's definitely not the case.
Certainly, by far. It's disheartening. It's really disheartening. Just watching our political leadership give full support to this.
Mhm.
But 2 years into this, finally, there has been pushback, especially, like, mounting in the past few weeks.
Yeah.
At the beginning of this week, Monday the 21st, the UK and 31 international partners released a joint statement condemning Israel's genocide. It says the suffering of civilians in Gaza has reached new depths. The Israeli government aid's delivery model is the Israeli government's aid delivery model is dangerous, fuels instability, and deprives Gaza of human dignity. We condemn the drip feeding of aid and the inhumane killing of civilians, including children, seeking to meet the most basic needs of food and water. And they go on for a few paragraphs. We urge the parties and international community to unite in a common effort to bring this terrible conflict to an end. But we reaffirm our complete support to the efforts of the US, Qatar, and Egypt to achieve this. I don't know so much about the US efforts but yeah, I mean, 31 nations condemning Israel. It's taken, nearly 2 years into this, but there's, international scrutiny.
Yeah.
Um, and even at home, I have this last clip, a congressman talking about a pro-Gaza a congressman denouncing the genocide in Israel.
And what do you call it when it appears to me that there is a deliberate, systemic effort to destroy in whole or in part the Palestinian people, to destroy them in whole or in part? We are witnessing before our very eyes, Mr. Speaker, genocide in Gaza, and we say nothing. I am amazed at how this country that stands for liberty among us, we refuse to speak truth to power. We refuse to speak truth about power. Well, today, I'm going to do it. And I'm doing it because these are precious babies that are being slaughtered. You see the bodies. You see the homes. You see the infrastructure. But you say nothing? Who are we? What is wrong with us? What is going on?
So, commendable statement from Al Green here. But I do want to make note of something here at the beginning of the video. All AIPAC members of Congress are told to leave before he starts speaking. This is what the
Really?
floor of Congress looks like right before he starts.
Oh my
What is
goodness.
that? 6 people? 7?
Yeah.
Yeah.
That is horrible. And AIPAC is the Israeli lobbyist group.
Yes, the American Israel Public Affairs Committee.
Yeah.
And AIPAC is its own beast in the grip that it has on our policy for Israel.
Yeah.
So, yeah, agreeing, it's a nice sentiment. Our government just closes their ears, la 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 la, to anything critical of Israel. And it's I wanted to dedicate this episode. I mean, not just because there's a lot of recent news, but because I just think it's important in this climate to make it really, really clear that we condemn what's happening in Israel. It disturbs me especially because it's our taxpayer money
Yeah.
paying for the bulk of Israel's military spending. And it disturbs me because the IDF trains the NYPD and our other major police departments. This is all, some might call this, reaching, but this is all training for, what we can do with our underclass here.
You're not wrong. I don't disagree with that at all. Like, the elite want control, they want power, and it seems like Israel has a lot of stake in that power, and it's definitely influencing our leadership. As you saw, there's no one on the floor out there, or in the seats, and that's there's so many connections, it seems like, to these officials. And what if the case is that if things were to be revealed, the only solution would be civil war in Israel and civil war in the United States? Like that's a drastic change. What if that's what Donald Trump's like facing up to?
Hmm.
Because if it is so deeply entrenched in our government, the only way we're going to be able to clean that is to like start new, it seems like. And that's dangerous. If America is, the forefront of our society and it is to be revealed that it is no longer a democratic country, like the elites won't go down without a fight.
It's a shame just seeing anybody support this regime, support what's happening, because they're just Donald Trump's base. The guys that are still supporting him are uninformed voters for the most part,
Yeah.
and it's just a shame seeing so much of our country be like that, willfully ignorant.
I agree, but we should not condemn. We should support them in the sense that we should support their education. We should support um,
Yeah.
helping them have an open mind. Talking about this is helping, um, get more information out. But we have to move beyond seeing left and right, and I think that's
Hmm.
what I've been like realizing a lot more and more as I get into these stories going on is the elite really don't want us to find our power as the people. But on the note of furthering education, if your audience wants to learn more about Israel in a maybe a more informed way about Netanyahu, there's a very powerful documentary called the Bibi Files. It brings out a lot of information about who Netanyahu is, why he's like Hitler. I know I mentioned that a couple times during this podcast, but this documentary really lays out Netanyahu's history, the corruption that he has been tried for, that he's, but these are things that have never really come to fruition because there has always been a convenient, thing to distract away from that. Um, and it's very interesting the information that they lay out. It lays out why Israel is being extremist. If we have an extremist leader in Israel, that's definitely going to affect it. And he has a history of being an extremist, and he has people in his administration, so to speak, that have histories tied to Jewish Jewish extremism um, and terrorism. And I'm surprised. I'm not surprised, actually. I'm haunted by the fact that the elite have so much power that they can influence the public to not see this. And that's something that I feel like is going to have to be reintegrated into our society so this doesn't happen. Otherwise, it's going to continue to happen, and nothing's really going to come of this other than Israel wins and genocide is, something that is okay so long as the elite are appeased, I suppose. But I really like this documentary. It was taken off of streaming platforms conveniently, so you have to go to a very specific website to even access it.
Hmm. Is it Jolt.film? I'm looking it
I
up
think so,
right now.
yes. Yep.
Okay. Uh, yeah, yeah, I'll probably check that out. Um, I would like to. I mean, while we're recommending resources, I'd love to recommend a much larger channel than ours. But just for those who are uninformed, I love GDF's content for the Israel-Palestine conflict. Just a lot of stuff. Great videos summarizing the Israel lobby, which is just a great book about the Israel lobby. And he's got some great videos going into the deep history of it. So yeah, check that stuff out. It's important to stay informed about this stuff at the very least, like at this stage.
Mhm.
Um, I I mean, there are lots of things, lots of resources for you to like donate to if that's something you're able to do. but just at the very least, being informed and not falling for the blatant propaganda from our government is so important on this. And I want to mention this one last article connecting what I was saying to this is all just this is a blueprint for what we can see in America in some aspects. And this is an article from NPR. Israeli settlers beat US citizen to death in West Bank. Just as it sounds, this man born in Florida visiting the West Bank, he's just beat to death by some settlers. Uh the article itself doesn't include a lot of information, but I've heard reporting that it, he was beat unconscious and just left without medical attention for several hours. And this kind of crime is horrifically common for Palestinians in the West Bank, but it's unique for a U.S. citizen, a dual citizen. And the fact that this has gained just no coverage whatsoever, it speaks to two things, in my opinion. Our refusal to criticize Israel, just let a U.S. citizen get beat to death, but also our current viewing of citizenship. A dual citizen, a brown dual citizen. I mean, that's barely an American citizen at all. By a lot of people's metric
Right.
nowadays.
I do think that that also says a lot about who controls the media,
Certainly.
and how influenced people are by the media. Obviously, that's
Mhm.
starting to change with the rise of independent media, but if Israel does control a lot of the media in the United States, and if they control government officials through lobbyists, and we're obviously going to be brainwashed into only supporting Israel, it makes sense why people would think that way. So it's not, in my opinion, productive to put these people down, but to have empathy, because I've fallen prey to this as well, being brainwashed in a certain sense. These companies, these corporations have it down to a science, how to get what they want, how to push what they want, and we have to fight back and become educated in order to even see that the fight is going on.
I agree. Being educated is important. And you can see it on Donald Trump's attacks on the Department of Education. It's clearly, in the elite's interest to not have an educated public. I don't know. How are you feeling? You think this is a good spot to wrap it up?
I do think so, yeah.
And I wish I had a more positive note to end this on, but I mean, it's a pretty serious topic. Sometimes you gotta reflect and you just gotta let it all seep in. But yeah. Next week, I don't think it'll be so. We'll see the news of the week, but I will be a bit more light.
You think so?
Um.